Hey guys, this is Tyler here. It is end of February, and this reminds me of a topic here. We all know Valentine's Day is February 14th. This is mostly a Hallmark holiday at this point. I don't think for most men it's a very fun day to celebrate. Maybe for some guys it is. For guys maybe who have a girlfriend or some beautiful gal, but otherwise, even for guys who are in marriages, it's not often the most enjoyable day. And also the other thing is that many guys in February and also in January, it seems like this is a big time of breakups. I have one family member and I have two acquaintances from here in Estonia, all have gone through breakups in the past month or so. It's really unfortunate. It's really difficult, I think, psychologically. It can be really depressing, especially on the first half of the month or in January. It's a tough time. I often think that women are almost like metaphorically cleaning the closet. This is kind of their version of like New Year's cleaning or spring cleaning, as unfortunate as it sounds. I also understand that when we look at, like, for many men, I have guys like everyone out there who have given me some great metaphors, analogies. I've always seen like women, when they find guys, date them, relationship, it seems kind of like them shopping for a phone, like a smartphone in a store. You could be like the coolest Apple iPhone one season and then within like a couple of years be considered totally dated. It's kind of like the iPhone that's just totally sold out. It seems like very sought after, and then 2 years later the phone becomes kind of old. It kind of seems, it loses its novelty and the girl just throws it out. And that's often what I see from how relationships appear to me nowadays with men. And it's really unfortunate. This is just where we live in nowadays. Now, historically, this may have been the case. Women may have had the same mindset, but there were many social factors that kept women much more in line than presently. We just don't have these societal factors that used to be very commonplace. So a guy might be dating or in a relationship for a couple years, if that. Often relationships tend to be shorter nowadays, and then they're kind of discarded. I think especially for men and women under 30 demographic, it's really high, maybe 95% of women that break up with the guy. In most cases, it's not the other way around. As the couples get older, it tends to go more even, but it still often maintains more towards the woman breaking up or divorcing more often than the guy. I'm not certain with like divorce or LTR, long-term relationships, if this January, February is a common month of breakup and divorce, but for shorter term relationships, this seems to be the case. It really triggers, I think, a lot of psychological problems, depression. And for one of these guys I knew, he was in a relationship for like 6 years with his girlfriend. He met her when she was about 19. He was like 4 years older, and now she's 25 and just broke up. It was like a month ago with this guy. They were both Estonian, and this just illustrates these situations. So I remember speaking to him a few months ago. It seemed very good, the relationship. He intended to maybe get married and have kids with this woman, and she just, out of the blue, it was like she was done with the guy, and she I guess wanted to move on. Perhaps it was this quote epiphany phase that she was kind of going to, and moving on to a guy that she considered to be better. Or it's kind of like that iPhone example where what was like the coolest Apple iPhone 6 several years ago, 6 years ago, now to her seemed like just the old iPhone, and she's ready for a new guy. As has been mentioned many times before, once the tangles and the novelty wears off, it becomes a lot more difficult to tie down a girl, maintain the girl. And also, especially with this world epidemic we've been going through the past year, it's been really hard because guys have had both less money in general. They haven't really been able to travel as much, probably. They haven't been able to do as much, maybe at home more often with their girlfriend or spouse. And in the media, obviously, there's been many big cases of all these separations, divorces. Kanye West, probably the most recent big case. And there's been a lot of other really big figures, Dr. Dre, among other guys, that have gone through divorces or separations in the past year. And this right now seems to be a little more elevated because of this crisis. And for a lot of these guys, it's very depressing. It's very psychologically hard, even for guys who aren't going through a divorce or separation, who might be single, looking for a girlfriend or spouse. Maybe they see these situations and are like, maybe this isn't worth it. Because take this acquaintance of mine, this Estonian who's in the relationship for 6 years. It's like, well, if that's the end of the road, is there a point in going through all this? Because, and this is probably a better kind of case. For many people, this younger age group, that would be a very long relationship, 6 years. And often guys might just find that maybe starting it isn't worth it. This is obviously where MGTOW has really became very essential and helped save a lot of guys, because in the past, guys may have jumped into a second relationship or been super depressed and just kind of drank their way out of problems, or just done more destructive things as a replacement, or jumped into another relationship rather than step back and look at the overall society, overall structure of the world, and access maybe this isn't the right habitat for having this kind of relationship. Like in this guy's case, what's also seems to be very common with people that come out of long-term relationships or marriages, they decide to maybe move to a different city, different country. This Estonian guy, he's going to be moving to Indonesia, to Bali, now in just a few weeks. Total change. He's also interested in the women of Indonesia, but just wants a different ambiance. And I can understand this. I relate to this. When my girlfriend broke up with me a year and a half ago, I kind of was like really wanting to get out of Russia at that time. That was one of the factors, because I just tied Russia, to St. Petersburg especially, to her. It was really hard for my mind to look at it and for everything else. I was associating everything with this girl. These cases too they demonstrate to me the problems we live in. This guy who had this breakup, probably one of the most alpha and masculine kind of guys, and just very easy to communicate with, easy to talk to type of guys here in Estonia. For many, he would have seemed like the prize, but if this guy went through a breakup, who would probably be considered the top percentile for masculine guys here in Estonia, it tells you where the trends are going, and that this really can happen with anyone. And also, what it makes me think is that perhaps females are preferring more beta, more gamma kind of guys. I sometimes think in many places now they don't like masculine guys. And this is going to run contrary to some very famous YouTubers, guys in the manosphere here. I'm not going to name any names. I'll just say these guys in the MRA discuss how women want their very masculine, very alpha guys. They don't want the guy to be mopping the floors, sweeping. And truthfully, I don't always agree with that. I'm just looking at the actions. And many of the guys I see around me, whether it was here in Estonia, in Russia, in the US, maintain long-term relationships, who kept their girlfriend or wife happy, these were guys willing to like clean the floors or do whatever the wife or girlfriend requested of them. In fact, the guys who kind of just had this FU mentality were often discarded very quickly from a relationship. Some of them just had like hookups and then it was over. The girl or woman didn't see a lot of utility in that, and that's why I beg to differ with some of these guys in the manosphere who still proclaim this, that they want guys that are super masculine, super alpha, and just simply don't care kind of mentality. This may serve a purpose, maybe for short-term flings, or certain women are like this, but in today's society, in many countries, I don't think it's like this. I think in some ways they actually like beta. They like gamma guys that they can control. They can really dictate the life, both people. And this also is due to just the upbringing. Many guys are coming from upbringings with mostly female guidance, or at least more matriarchal. Even if a person has a dad in the picture, parents are married, it still tends to be now more female-led marriages, relationships, which then translates into the home setting. Because this is often how the kids of the next generation also approach life. And it goes back to what I was saying, is that you got to look at the actions. You don't look at the words. Women can say whatever. They can say, I want a more masculine, I want this more traditional like guy that goes to work for 10 hours a day and does masculine work, can work on cars, and can be very supportive and strong, that doesn't talk a lot about their emotions. But I see guys, and that guy that I mentioned, the Estonian guy, would fall into that category. I see guys that are total opposite, and they maintain long-term relationships, sometimes marriages, or short-term relationships with women that are not at all like this. I think this is kind of a pendulum swing. And in fact, I know more guys that don't fall into that more masculine category that seem to have better relationships often. The woman seems to be happier or more content to some degree. But people have different social circles, they have different perspectives, they live in different countries, so maybe guys see differently. This is just what I see around me. And yeah, there are exceptions to this case, but those are exceptions often in my experience. And so moving on though, is the depression that a lot of guys feel, whether they're gotten out of a relationship or wanting to get into one. I think there's kind of seasonal depression. It's not just when winter comes. I think it's when winter transitions to spring. I actually used to get this kind of depression when I was younger, not as much now, but it's kind of weird. It seems like your senses kind of start working more. It starts going a little more into overdrive. Very little sunlight, and it's cold, especially in this part of the world. Your senses they're kind of put on pause for a bit, or they're not as strong. Whereas when it gets warmer, there's more sun. I think it kind of wakes those senses up and brings out more emotions often, whether good or bad. And those emotions can really be difficult to sometimes deal with, especially if it's difficult times, if the economy isn't so well, job situation, maybe you're going through a separation, or you just have been, and you really have to be strong and think about what you do have. Think about the positive elements, the things that you can be content about. And if there are problems you need to take care of in your personal life, take care of them. Just make small changes. It's just a matter of consistency, making those incremental changes each day. It's not going to change overnight. You start somewhere and you just work towards that. At the end of the day, the focus really isn't about the women. It's not about pleasing a woman nonstop. Life is short. We only have one life here, and you have to make the most of your own life. You can't just be concerned about how the other person feels. When you think in a sense of years and time's very short. And the other thing too is, as I tell people, like a guy who's been through a separation, divorce, good season can very quickly change to a bad season, and bad season can change to a good season. Often if you haven't experienced the bad, you won't know what the good feels like. In many countries, if it was exceptional weather, if it was always sunny and warm, you wouldn't appreciate it. Like if you dealt with very cold, very cloudy weather, you wouldn't appreciate, and it would be harder to discern the good, the super nice weather. It's the same thing, I think, with patterns when it comes to people. The same example applies here. So if you're going through any kind of separation right now, this is like a big season. Like I said, I think women see this as kind of cleanup time, as bad as it sounds. Maybe some men are also. Maybe they've separated, kind of thrown their girlfriend or spouse under the rug. This doesn't happen as much nowadays, but there may be some cases here. You have to remember that this is not something to think about too much, to carry on and not better opportunities will probably come around. You may meet a better girlfriend. You may realize it's not that important and can still enjoy your life without anything or anyone in the picture. And also remember, like in the case I gave with that one guy, a Stony guy, he was fortunate. I mean, he didn't have children. He didn't hadn't been married. And I often think the shorter the better. If there's a breakup or divorce, the longer it goes out, the more problems and complications are going to arise. And if he was living 2 or 3 generations ago, by now probably would have had at least 2 kids, maybe 3 kids, and then would have had to deal with that and his ex-girlfriend and all the problems related to that. So you have to think of it from that, and that maybe it was better it ended before those other things came into life, because that's actually what pushes a lot of guys to the brink of huge problems. When you look at like depression and guys offing themselves, it often is once kids are brought into the picture, it adds much more components to the whole situation. Same thing with short-term relationship that's going to end is probably better than a long-term relationship that ends, and then there's all the emotional baggage that comes with that. Always remember that at the end of the day, like 90+% of the time, it's women that break the relationship or divorce. So they're going to be the ones that truly regret it long term. If they did this, if they broke up or divorced, it's on them. It's nothing that you should think about or be ashamed of. You just move on. This is my outlook on this area, and I look forward to your feedback below. Thank you.